Hey, what's up, guys? This is Shockwave48 here. Welcome back to another video. And today we got ourselves a new chapter of My Hero Academia, chapter 403. My bad. And we are pretty much getting close to the final battle of My Hero Academia, guys. And I gotta say, these chapters and these spoilers are going great. I love it, and I can't wait to see how this My Hero Academia ends and the final battle. It's gonna be epic. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to see how this battle can go up between Deku and Shigaraki. But right now we're focusing on between All Might, which is he's nearly his death, and All for One, and trying to stop him. So that's pretty much the strategy here. But um, I saw this new chapter today, and I saw the like a few times, and it feels like in this chapter where we see All Might is dead for some reason, and someone else is gonna probably save him. So I'm pretty sure who could that be to save All Might in this scenario. So let's go and jump right in, guys. Let's check this new chapter out.
I know I've been going like full dive on shorts lately and everything, so it's probably a surprise when you're seeing this pop up in your subscription feed or anywhere on the home feed or anything. But we're back for My Hero Academia chapter 403 spoilers, and when you see what happens in this chapter, you'll completely understand why I had to come back for this chapter, because this chapter is absolute madness. So of course I want to say thank you to Rukusu, thank you to Dobby's pole dance. Let's get right into the spoilers of this honestly just really insane chapter of My Hero Academia. It's got me really excited to be reading again, so let's get to it. So the title of this chapter actually comes in two separate parts, with us first getting the end of an era. And according to Rukusu, the chapter actually begins with Kid All Might reading the Anpanman manga, which is a real manga in a real world, with his mom, saying that his childhood was very normal. It's not even something that can be called a proper origin, but he always looked back and saw that the path he chose was very important. And of course, this page is amazing to get because we actually get to see All Might's mom, right? Like when All Might is very young, we get to see what he's like, and this is the first time ever seeing All Might as a
I
young
never knew he
child.
had
Well,
a
we get to
mother.
see his mom here, and yeah, I mean, she kind of fits the bill of exactly what I would expect, with really, really long blonde hair that looks very much like Toshinori's, right? Like that kind of flat hair that All Might has. She has the same thing, and we see them in a simple room. You know, it looks like she has a little ironing board, maybe ironing her clothes or his father's clothes. We don't see anything about All Might's father at all in this chapter, and I doubt that's something that we're ever going to see in the manga, right? Like at this point, I don't think we're going to see anything about his dad, but we do see that All Might did sort of live in like times that were kind of just like our times to a certain extent, or at least the times that we have grown up in, and I think that's interesting, considering the fact that like at some point in My Hero, they definitely got a little futuristic, and we know that All Might is a lot older than a lot of the other people in the cast, so it's nice to see what society was like when he was born. Rukusu continues to say that it cuts back to the present and All for One is laughing, saying that All Might won't get to choose how he dies. And it's at this point where we learn that he destroyed the gauntlets that All Might was using his spikes quirk before they exploded. So on the page, we see All for One with a really, really big smile on his face, kind of like a twisted grin, and we see that the gauntlets that All Might was literally just about to use to take himself out, we saw the explosion kind of happening at the end of last chapter.
What's going on here? Can't you see we're having a meeting?
Do you have a legendary hero?
No, but what about it?
Those are no longer working because there are massive spikes kind of tearing right through them, and I guess that also means that those spikes are tearing through All Might's arm itself because they're coming out of All for One's body, right? So they're going right through All for One's shoulder, I guess, where they're spawning through All Might's arm and destroying the gauntlet that he was about to use to blow both of them up. And a very crucial detail that might be missed in this chapter is that means that All for One did not get rewinded, right? Like All Might's big strategy here to kind of nerf All for One was to rewind him to the point where he was maybe a kindergartner, but now we see that All for One is not going to actually be rewinded in this instance, and he's kind of the same age as the UA students, which I think is going to be really important as this fight kind of moves forward, because I feel like it's just going to be really good for the symbolism, and it provides a proper villain for one of the characters that we're going to be seeing in a second here. What we see after this is All for One actually growing a brain and being a smart villain for one of the first times in this entire scenario, and he actually uses Stain's quirk on All Might, and I like the fact that like as he uses Stain's quirk, it gives him like a really long and nasty tongue, and even at one point we see All for One smile kind of like crack and become this big sort of like Cheshire cat grin, like it's just big, like almost like Joker from the Batman, right? Where if he didn't have those scars, where it would be big. It's disgusting, it's horrifying, but I really like seeing how All for One's quirks, when he uses different ones, they all kind of change his body in various different ways, but he's just kind of rewinding through all of it, right? So it's like it all kind of just goes back to normal at the end of the day. So as All for One licks one of his hands that has a lot of All Might's blood on it, since he's holding him floating in the air, of course he uses Stain's quirk, and that completely immobilizes neutralizes All Might. And luckily for All Might, he actually has A-type blood. And we know that Stain has like a tier list of different kind of bloods that he can affect with his quirk. So we know that it starts with O, A, B, and B, with B being the most affected and O being the least affected. So, I mean, All Might kind of lucked out in this instance, because if he is saved or anything happens to him here, he will be able to move almost as quick as like the fastest person who would be able to move, right, in this scenario. So at least he's not completely locked down like he would be for 10 minutes if he had B-type blood. It's at this point where All For One tells All Might that he knows wounded heroes are dangerous, so he didn't let his guard down in this scenario, knowing that All Might was gonna try doing something. And All Might's just kind of frozen there with a horrified look on his face, realizing that in this situation, while All For One has his hands around his neck, he's actually completely helpless. On the next page, we get a situation update with what's happening with Yue, and Rukusu tells us that now that Yue is floating, Gentle wants to go and help All Might against All For One. But at that same moment, All For One being very, very calculating and realizing exactly what's going on, or maybe just having some sort of hearing quirk, honestly, that lets him hear what everyone is planning on the battlefield, shoots a laser beam from one of his eyes, and it actually looks really cool as we see like smoke or light coming off one of his eyeballs. And as he shoots this kind of like electric bolt of like a laser beam, sort of like Dio's eye powers in JoJo, this hits Yue right in the center and causes something to explode, I guess, forcing Gentle to stay there holding up the school. As I'm sure that everyone inside Yue feels like a massive kind of shift in the balance, and I'm wondering like if anyone crucial was in the path of where All For One was shooting, right? Like you would wonder if All For One has like some sort of X-ray quirk or something like that. Maybe he could actually see into Yue and see where some of the crucial infrastructure is, or where people are repairing it or something, and shoot exactly through there. Because if that's the case, I mean, RIP to Momo and Hatsume and several other characters, but I don't think that we're going to be like unlucky enough to have that happen. So it's just a random kind of miscreant lightning bolt shot through Yue that is going to effectively have it crashing down to the ground all over again. So hang in there, Gentle. Now at this point, we actually see the jet pilots that were friends with Star and Stripe, and if you remember, these characters were like her best friends, right? Like she grew up with these pilots, and I believe like maybe one of them lost their lives during the battle between Star and Stripe and Shigaraki. I don't think it was very many of them or any of them at all, but we know that they were very crucial in collecting battle information for the Shigaraki fight that's happening in this arc, because they got all the information of everything that he was able to do in their black boxes, and likely provided that to All Might for his suit to be made before the final arc. But here we learn that General Akbar is actually watching through a live stream direct feed from the jets, and as the jets sort of surround themselves in energy and sort of dive towards All For One, things don't really go all that well for them. Because as the pilots also try to help with their jets, saying that they won't let Star's idol die, All For One quickly destroys them all, literally as they're giving the command to fire. He just kind of swipes through them and destroys the jets entirely, and it's really brutal because he swipes through all three of them and they're just gone. Those guys are just dead. I mean, RIP, you're not going to see them again in the story, but it's very rare to see Horikoshi just like nonchalantly getting rid of characters who at some point had dialogue and were important, right? Like not just some random background characters. That's all the Americans in Japan right now. I think they're just gone, right? Those are the only ones. And of course, as we see those people falling down to the sky and seeing their jets all like blown apart and flaming and all the bits falling down to the ground beneath Yue, we see General Akbar kind of sinking his head and despairing as he realizes that things are just really not going well here. Rukusu says that Akbar feels hopeless, and Deku and Tsukauchi also start to freak out when All For One holds All Might in his arms. And that's actually what we see on the next page, as we see people all over the world rooting for All Might, because you got to remember this is being streamed to literally everywhere on Earth, and people are even just watching on their phones in America and everywhere. But as everyone is watching and you see people starting to get really, really worried, All For One literally picks All Might up with both of his hands and raises him over his head, looking like he's about to sacrifice All Might or do something really horrible. Kind of like when Bane picked up Batman and broke his back. It looks like a much more evil version of that. Like, you know, All For One
this
is
guy's a madman.
Here I go, my coup de grace, as he plans to just like rip All Might in two halves, right? And one interesting thing we see, of course, here is Melissa from the first My Hero Academia movie, just once again reconfirming for anyone who's still wondering if those movies are canon, that yes, they are. As we watch All Might get lifted up into the air, we see that some people have even already given up in this scenario, and on the page we can even see that Gran Torino was watching from his hospital room and crying. And again, because All Might is paralyzed here and he really can't do anything to help himself, he's making a really, really desperate face, and Deku doesn't know know what to do because he's literally holding Shigaraki down using his black chain technique, and he looks up and he just sees this happening. And I mean, does he let go of Shigaraki, who just threatened that he was going to go to UA and take care of everyone there, especially when he knows that Shigaraki could just one touch decay it and get rid of it entirely in like 2 seconds? Or does he just watch his master get torn apart? So it's in this moment where Deku or Tsukauchi, or Deku and Tsukauchi, start to pray, saying, "Someone, please help All Might. Someone." And what do we see when we turn the page, folks? We see none other than the reawakening of Katsuki Bakugo. As UA is falling,
He's alive!
more of two big massive holes sticking on either end. We see
Oh,
a giant shining ray
thank
of light on the top of it
goodness.
as we see one soul figure standing on top of
It's
UA
about
as the
time
soul
we see him
figures.
again.
Of course, like we just mentioned, that is Bakugo, who Deku doesn't even really notice yet as he cries, looking at what's happening to All Might. But almost like he senses exactly what's going on, Deku looks over at UA and he sees Bakugo standing there covered in blood, but standing and holding All Might's card. And in this moment, it's like all of the rain surrounding everyone just completely stops as time almost seems to like freeze, and it's like the calm before the storm, right? You see these pages and you know something is about to happen. As we see Bakugo, we cut back to like this symbolism of the trail of hope that All Might has left along his journey in his life. We see Bakugo holding his card, knowing that when Bakugo died, his last thought was, "I wish I could have got an autograph on this card." And now All Might is in front of him as someone is threatening him. So it definitely feels like to me that Bakugo is gonna go and get that card signed from All Might no matter what. So even if All for One is in his way, or whoever is in his way, it's GG. In my opinion, the win condition for the villains was for Bakugo to be down, Bakugo to be out of the count, because it's not too hard for the pair of All for One and Shigaraki to actually wear Deku down. In fact, the best situation probably would have been for Deku to somehow get Shigaraki on his side. But in this situation, where we have a Bakugo who just recently awakened his quirk, just recently got such impressive boosts that he was just speed blitzing Shigaraki at max power, and is now fused with one of the top fastest pro heroes, and we don't even know what that might have done to his quirk or any of his abilities, this is over for the villains. It's GG. If you had any hope in All for One or Shigaraki, just put it away. It's done. Now that Bakugo's out, it's time to put it on the table and take these villains out. And on the last page of the chapter, we see Deku and Bakugo making eye contact with each other, and you just know that in this moment, they said everything that they had to say to each other with just a glance, right? They both agreed who they were going to take care of. Like, I got Shigaraki, you got All for One, let's do this tag team. It's over. It's GG for the villains, and I guess I gotta come back next week to see what happens, because they're
Okay, I'm a little bit surprised at this chapter, not only because that Off One is completely beat up, but I'm also excited at the fact that Bakugo is back and alive, even though he's a little bit bruised. But also, he gets to go, join forces with Deku, tag team, and take out All for One and Shigaraki. Now, this kind of tag team reminds me of a movie, My Hero Academia. Y'all remember Heroes Rising when they took out, they worked together to take out Nine, and they share All for One? I believe something might happen. I think that might happen again in this on chapter 444. I believe, because obviously, like he said, it's GG. It's over for Shigaraki and All for One, because obviously Shigaraki has no idea how capable Bakugo is, and for that, I think they have a chance of winning. I think it's just over. If he can actually, if Bakugo has any chance of being All for One, he better give him everything he has, because he's not gonna let All Might die unless he gets that autograph card signed. So this is crazy, guys. This is actually epic, and I feel like Deku's gonna get fired up and take out Shigaraki once and for all, because he's completely not gonna be holding back on this time, because now that he has Bakugo on his side, he is confident, he is not worried, and he actually knows that he's gonna do the best he can to stop Shigaraki for good. So, and we're now on break, so we got until next week. Can't wait to see what happens next. Alright, guys, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.